One of my pet peeves about sightseeing, about traveling, is the queuing. I just do not like to queue for things, especially long queues. This was the reason I did not even go to Paris the first time I had an opportunity to go. I didn't want to stand in day-long queues. But some things are worth queuing for, and the Colosseum in Rome is one of them. Hello again, this is Sunny and you're watching Sunny Escapades. We are talking about my trip to Rome with my friends, and if you're not subscribed then you would not know that we have already had one part of this story. So please subscribe so that you don't keep missing these episodes. In the first episode you saw that we had that kind of fight, kind of argument about the food versus the sightseeing issue. Because of that, I was a little bit on my guard, so in the evening I told all my friends, all three of them, said tomorrow morning I am going to get up early and I am going to go to the Colosseum because there will be a long queue, so I will go stand in the queue as early in the morning as possible. If you guys want to go, you can be ready and leave with me. If you are not, I don't care. So that was a very firm ultimatum that I gave them because, I did not want to repeat of today's incident that they want to go have breakfast in some very fancy place and stuff like that. So next morning, as I had intended, I got about 6:30 in the morning. I was trying to take a shower, but there was no shampoo, no shower gel. This is one thing that you need to watch for when you go traveling. If you're booking apartments, there may or may not be these toiletries. So I thought, okay, in the evening we can do the shower. By the way, none of my friends were awake. One of them had said that she wanted to go, but in the morning she was not awake. I did not wake anybody. I did not call anybody's name. I just got ready, put my shoes on very quietly and left, closed the door very quietly as well. Okay, so I wanted to go use the Roman buses, but I got halfway and then I was waiting for the next bus, which is 87 I think, and it just did not come. Ultimately, it came about 15 minutes late, but by the time I had lost patience and I had called a taxi. So with the taxi, the advantage was that the taxi took me on that road, which was right in front of the Colosseum. So the kind of shot that you see in the movies, action movies, Mission Impossible kind of movies, I saw that shot as well. And once you get there, then there's a underground entrance, like the metro entrance you have to go through, then you get in. And this was the day which was kind of good, kind of bad. It was the 6th of November, and I don't know if they do it every 6th of November or if they do it first Sunday of November or whatever, but there's one day in the year when the Colosseum has free entrance, so you don't have to pay anything to get in. Otherwise you have to pay, I think, 12 euros or something. So that was the time, 2022. So this was good because you don't have to pay, but it was bad for one reason. The reason is that if you are going on a paid day, then you can buy a ticket online and you can buy skip the line ticket, which means you can just go in with your guide and get in. So you'll have to buy a tour or something, but you can get in. And those tours were not very expensive as well, something like 30-35 euros, so not very expensive. So you can have multiple people from your group as well, then it's even cheaper, then you can share. But the problem was, because there was no payment today, there was no skip the line. And although there was no payment, there was still a ticket. So you see the point? Because you have to get the ticket, even though you don't have to pay for it, you have to stand in the queue. And because there's nobody paying, everybody is equal, so everybody is standing in the queue. So there is no way to skip the line. Once I got there, I even called the tour company to ask, are you doing any tours today? And they told me the same thing, no, there are free tickets today. So we are doing tours, but there's no skip the line today. So, okay, fine. So I stood in the queue. I joined the queue exactly at 9 o'clock. And it was a nice November day. There was sun shining, so it was this was not a hardship to stand in the queue. It was just boring, but it was a very long queue. It was okay for me because I was arriving so early. 9 o'clock was the starting time for everything. And I did feel bad for those guides, because the tour guides on this day, because there's no skip the line, so they were actually doing the tours, but what they were doing was they would stand in the queue. Like, if you are hiring a guide, then the guide stands beside you when you are in the queue, and they will talk to you and then give you information about the Colosseum, and like stand the whole time with you. So I was kind of feeling sorry for the poor guys who were having to spend so much of their own time just standing in the queues, because they had already seen the Colosseum. There was somebody actually who offered me a tour as well, but I said no, because there's no escape the line, so no thanks. On second thought, I should have taken the tour, because at least then there would be one less out of work guide, because you should always be nice and kind to people who are making their money with tourism. That's what I'm saying, because you have the money to travel, so think about other people, which is something that I have kind of learned after doing so much travel, that we are in a good position, we are in a privileged position, because we can travel, we can afford to travel. So anyway, at that time I was like, no, if I'm gonna stand with the guide, then no point, I'll just stand by myself. So while I was standing in the queue, I was watching YouTube videos. I had my Bluetooth headphones, so I was watching YouTube videos about the Colosseum, and that was a really good use of the time, because the Colosseum is such a fascinating building. I knew it was fascinating. I did not know how fascinating it was. I learned all those facts about it, and with the YouTube, you can see the visuals like you can see now, and it was really amazing. So I'll tell you some of those facts now, so that this is one building which is worth standing in the queue for. So it's really huge. How huge it is? It used to be able to seat about 50,000 to 80,000 spectators. This is how big it was when it was like the full oval shape. Now it's a little bit torn down, and also it has been standing there for about 2,000 years. So while you are standing in the queue, you can actually see the building, but you are queuing right alongside, right around the building itself. So you can take some nice pictures from there, you can admire the building, you can see the wall. So it's kind of okay. So we were standing in the queue. I got the ticket, the free ticket, at 10:18. So 1 hour and 18 minutes was about that much. And later on also it was like between 1 hour and 2 hours that it was taking. So we got in, and getting in was a little bit tricky, because there was this long queue, and then I could not find the entrance, because it's such a huge building. How do I get in? Where do I get in? Which side? So I think once or twice I stood in a queue again, thinking this was a queue for entry, but it was actually another part of the queue for the tickets. So it was that big, that queue. It had gone to different parts of the complex by the time I got my ticket. So ultimately I did find it, and if you don't know it, it's exactly opposite the ticket counters, and you just have to go through the 2 or 3 sections of the queue to get to that part, and that part had no queue at all. It was like, you have the ticket, come on, get in. And once I got in, I admired it, and I tried to photograph every inch of that. It's a huge building. So it was created after the reign of Emperor Nero. Nero was not a very popular emperor, okay? So he committed suicide in, 25 AD or something, very early in the 80s. And then after that, the first Flavian emperor took the throne, whose name was Vespasian. And Vespasian wanted to appease the public, because the public was very, with the emperor being so evil, they were very pissed off with the whole emperorship. So he wanted to keep the people happy, so he wanted to give them some entertainment. This was the way to entertain them. And also, this site where this Colosseum was built, this was the place where Nero had built his huge castle, his palace, and also a lake. That was his, like a luxurious residence where he was living. And there was a big statue of him outside the palace as well. So because those things were hated as a symbol of Nero's reign, Vespasian completely turned them down, and he built this Colosseum in its place, so that replace something hateful with something that people like, something that people can enjoy later on. Okay, so this took a long time to create, and it was actually not finished in Flavian's time. It was finished in his son's time, the second Flavian emperor, who was called Titus. And it was in the year 80 that it was inaugurated. And when it was inaugurated, there was a party for 100 days, like 3 months of just partying. So these Roman people, they knew how to live, okay? So This was started at the time, and it was not called the Colosseum at the time. It was called the Flavian Amphitheater, after the Flavian dynasty or the kingdom series, whatever you want to call it. And Colossus was the statue outside. That was also replaced later on. I'm forgetting what it was replaced with, but that was a statue of Nero. It was replaced with a statue of a god or something different, so that people would not hate it. And that was a huge statue. And after that, and that was moved closer to the Colosseum. So after that statue, it was called the Colosseum. Otherwise, it was called the Flavian Amphitheater. This, like I said, it's huge. So about 150 acres, I think it is, and it can take 50,000 to 80,000 people when it was full. And it was free for everybody, so it was like free entry, free food, so you come and watch the games. So there were all kinds of games held there. So gladiator fights you already know about. I think everybody knows about them, that gladiators used to fight there in the arena. And usually those fights used to be to death, but that is the myth. Not all fights were to death. When one gladiator was defeated, he could ask for the pardon from the emperor. And you might have seen in the Gladiator movie that they always got them killed. That was not the case. Most of the time the emperor forgave the gladiator, so they were pardoned and they would live to fight another day. And where did the gladiators come from? The gladiators came from retired soldiers, or from prisoners or slaves, and there was a gladiator school where they got this training for fighting. So these people, then the people actually used to bet on them as well, on their fights, just like we do these days on sports and fights and MMA and all those things. So these gladiators, they actually became action heroes. They used to gain some fame as well, and then quite a few of them used to earn their freedom also. I read something like they used to keep fighting as well even after they got their freedom, because they enjoyed the fame and the status of being a gladiator. I think Spartacus was one of the most famous ones, but there were a few more which had quite a lot of fame in the Roman life. So it was not as bad as you might see in the movies or believe from some of the stories. So I read some ridiculous number in somewhere that was 400,000 people were killed in the mock battles. I don't think that number is anywhere as close, because all those battles, they were not to the death all the time. Okay, so let's talk about the stadium seating. This stadium seating is like very typical, like we see everywhere now. At the time, this seating was a status symbol, because those sections of the seating, they're called the cavea. Okay, so they're like the seating sections, about 6 or 10 people can sit in that, and they go in status from the bottom one to the top one. The bottom one was the podium, and that's the lowest level, which is the most respected people. Like the emperor would sit in there, the senators would sit there, VIPs would sit there. Then there was something, and let me see if I can pronounce this, Maenianum Primum. So Maenianum Primum was the next level up, which was for noble citizens and knights, and then Maenianum Secundum, which was for ordinary Roman citizens. And further up, there was the Maenianum Summum in Linus. I don't know how to pronounce that, sorry. But that was for the top level, which is the lowest status for women, slaves, and the poorest of spectators. Okay, so this is how it went. And for the protection of the audience from the sun, because long games, you're watching long game in the sun, then there used to be a tent-like covering which was called the velarium. And this velarium could be closed or opened by pulling ropes. There were soldiers who could pull the ropes to close it or open it as the need may be. So this was the whole status, and the tickets are free. You come on a Friday and then you watch it. I don't know if it was Friday, I'm just making a joke, but this is how it used to go. Okay, so there was this whole, so you know the seating system, the seating arrangement is there. Under that, in the middle there's the whole arena, which is the stage, and then below the stage is this section called the hypogeum. And the hypogeum in Greek, it just basically means underground. So this was the underground under the stage, and this had a lot of trapdoors and tunnels and cages and ropes and pulleys. There was a whole system of those. Okay, and with this system, what they could do during the battles, during like a stage show, you're managing a stage show, they could bring an animal on the stage, They could bring another gladiator on the stage. They could bring scenery on the stage, so they could just change the look, or you can change the play while the play was going on. So this was like a whole very intricate system of these chains and pulleys. The place is still there. There are no chains and pulleys anymore. Obviously, those things don't survive. But you can see the tunnels, you can see the passages, you can go into the Hypogeum. There are doors and everything for those as well. I did not go into that, but you can see, because it's broken down now, so you can see from above as well. You can see into the bottom section. Okay, so one thing that the Hypogeum had, which I find really fascinating, was that it could be used to flood the whole arena, the stage, not the arena, not the Colosseum completely, which is the stage area, could be completely sealed and flooded with water, so much water that they could have boats in them. And with those boats, they used to reenact naval battles in that. So that I find really cool. Okay, so that's the stage area, that's the Hypogeum. So I tried to take a picture of every single thing in there. I think I succeeded, probably. So once I finished that, so that was the Colosseum. This is one of the things that is like, I was really in awe of that area, because even though it is broken down, and it's broken down because it's gone through several earthquakes which kind of broke it down, but it was also pillaged, or you can say recycled. Like, people took stones from the Colosseum to use in other buildings or even their private residences. So that's how it lost a lot of its stone, but quite a lot of it is still there. You can see the shape, you can see the walls, and it's absolutely fascinating. So Rome is worth going to see the Colosseum. There's more to see there, obviously, but just for the Colosseum, it's definitely worth going for. Okay, so once I spent as much time as possible. It was a warm day now because the sun was coming up, and it was very crowded. Obviously, it's very crowded because it's, how famous it is. So I came out of that and took more pictures from outside as well. And then I went to and I keep telling you, don't go to the restaurants which are near the, these sites and places of interest. But this time I actually did it myself. I went to a restaurant which was right in front of the Colosseum and got a table inside, but I could see the Colosseum from where I was sitting by the window. It was a nice lunch, and I had a whole margarita pizza by myself because I was alone at this time, remember? So I just finished all of that myself because I had been walking so much that I was hungry. And after that, while I was finishing my pizza, my friends called me and said that they are now awake and they want to come over. Where am I? And how to get there and all of that. So I told them where to come and where to find me. I think I'll stop here and then we'll carry on from next episode as to what more there was to see in Rome. And also in the next episode, I'll tell you about the moment of bien-être, the moment of bliss that I felt in Rome, which I felt a few times in my life, but I'll tell you about that in the next episode. There's some story to go before we get there. Thank you so much for watching. I do hope you subscribe. I do hope you like it and then share it with other people who might enjoy the travel stories. And I will see you in the next one. Thank you and bye bye. Have a wonderful week.